right. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Liz Helton, and for our March presentation of Just Ask Julia, we are going to be talking all about content and storytelling. And we're going to particularly frame this up around your resume and your LinkedIn. Now, we talk a lot about these two particular assets in our work here at Career Transformation Partners, and we'll sometimes talk about formatting and layout and structure. Today, we're really going to dig into the actual storytelling and the way that you are presenting yourself and some strategies to take with you when you are building your resume versus your LinkedIn. And we're going to kind of toggle between these two platforms for different sections so that you can get an idea of how you can transform your story, your career narrative in a way that is going to read in for these two assets in a really specific and strategic way. Let's get started. All right, so why does storytelling even matter when it comes to your professional assets? Well, first of all, people remember stories more than job titles. They remember the experience that they have when they're having a conversation with someone. And so by putting your audience into your story and the things that you have accomplished, you're helping them connect the dots as to why they are there to talk to you and why you're maybe the best candidate for a position or the thought leader that they need to be working with. And then, of course, hiring managers and recruiters, when we're looking at a resume, they skim. I don't know how many of you have read a resume or conducted an interview process, but as you are looking through a resume, nobody reads that document from top to bottom. But if you can pull together a story and be able to do so in a concise and strategic way, it's going to connect the dots and it's going to allow that person to go on a journey in a really consolidated way that is going to pave the way for a better conversation as well. So let's get into how we can make that happen. So first and foremost, what are some things that we want to absolutely avoid doing when it comes to your resume and your LinkedIn? Some common mistakes. First and foremost is listing your job duties without impact. One of the most common things I see when I get a resume from a client for the first time is that it is a series of job descriptions. They could have been pulled directly from the source when they first got the job, directly from that original job description. And it'll be phrases like responsible for, right? Where it's literally listing what the job was. When somebody is assessing a resume or a LinkedIn profile for that matter, they don't want to know just what you did. They want to know how well you did it. Secondly, is sticking too much to vague buzzwords. You know, the soft skills, those things that pretty much anybody could say, and it doesn't actually tell you a lot. So things like strategic and results-driven leader. Is peppering these in here and there can be okay and can help kind of move that story along. But in reality, it's not actually telling anybody much about you. Thirdly is, making it all about the company. I see a lot of people spend a lot of real estate on their resume and in their LinkedIn talking about what the company does. X company is, a fortune whatever with the X billion dollars in assets. Some of that can be important if it moves your story along, but if you're focusing exclusively on what the company does, you are eating away at your two 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper or your limited LinkedIn character count, talking about something that somebody else, if they're really curious, can go research somewhere else. Instead, what we want to focus on is your impact and your value. Taking that storytelling and telling not just what you did, but why does it matter, right? So if you're talking about the company, it's really should be through the lens of, hey, this is the level of revenue that I owned, right? This is the level of oversight I had and drove with this size of a company. If you're using that results driven, it needs to be backed up by what that result really was. Right. Not just talking about those job duties, but saying, okay, here's the result within that job duty. Here's an example of how we can take something that's really kind of description based focused and really turn it into why you're valuable and not have people read between the lines and guess. So instead of saying something along the lines of manage a company's social media accounts and posted updates, We want to flip that around into what we like to call the X, Y, and Z format of accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. Grew LinkedIn engagement by 50% in 6 months by launching a new content strategy and audience engagement plan. Now, can you absolutely extend that out further and tell more of that story? Yes, but that's a great jumping off point for saying, okay, this is what the impact was and how it was measured. And then here's a little bit of the strategy that I used in order to get to that accomplishment, right? And this is a perfect example of what a bullet in your professional experience could look like in your resume to be able to showcase not just what you've done, but how well you've done it. Now, if you're going to take this into LinkedIn, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can turn that into more of a story around, what that strategy and engagement plan really looked like. Let's talk about it. All right. Before we get into the deep dive of your bullets, I want to start kind of at the top of your profile or your resume with what is the headline. Now, on both your resume and your LinkedIn, you should have a headline that connects you to what your overarching story is. This is your first impression, right? This is the first thing besides your name that people are going to see that connects them to the role and the type of professional that you are. So both on resume and LinkedIn, we're going to show what this headline should look like, right? This is a positioning and branding tool that positions you instantly to a recruiter or a hiring manager, and it helps keep you top of mind. Now with LinkedIn, this headline is your elevator pitch. If you were only going from the first to the third floor, this is the thing that a recruiter, a hiring manager, whoever is searching you out, this is the reason why they're going to click on your profile. Your headline is the most important, biggest piece of information that you have in order to say, hey, apart from my name and maybe that little tiny circle that shows you what my picture is, this is why you should click on my profile, right? It's the keyword searchability that is going to help the right people find you. On your resume, it's going to frame your experience and align you with a specific opportunity. Now, when it comes to the biggest difference between your resume and your LinkedIn, your resume is a really reactive tool. You're going to use it for one thing, right? You're going to adjust it for a specific opportunity. And if you aren't doing that, that is definitely a big takeaway for today, is that your resume should be updated for every opportunity that you go to. And if you've ever had a conversation with me or Julia, you're going to know that you should be aligning your resume for the opportunity. Your LinkedIn, on the other hand, this is a proactive tool. It lives and breathes online so that at any point in time, people can come and find you, and it needs to align with every segment of your audience. So when we are writing for these tools, we need to be really thinking through who the audience is. With your resume, it's a very targeted audience for the individual for that opportunity. With your LinkedIn, it needs to be an overarching story of you, the professional, that's going to align with any type of opportunity, whether it's a job search, it's a potential customer, it's, friends and family, all the different segments of your audience need to be able to take away something for that. But it all starts with that headline right at the top. You have 220 characters with your headline on LinkedIn. And you have a line of content on your resume for it. Make the most of it. How do we structure a headline let's start with your resume, right? It should be short, direct, and like I said, tailored to the role you're applying for. So a good formula to use is your role and expertise, your core strength, and then the industry or impact. And I have a few examples here that you can kind of look through based on an area that you might find yourself in. So growth marketing strategist, demand gen, and GTM, because goodness knows for every marketer out there, there are just as many types of marketing. You want to make specific, don't just say marketing professional, right? Take it a step further and say what type of marketing professional you are, right? Knowing that this individual is SaaS and AI tech focused, that the industry that they are targeting and serving in is important. Senior product manager. Okay, that on its own doesn't say as much as we would like it to, but then we take it a step further and talk about AI and machine learning, enterprise SaaS, right? So then it says, okay, this isn't somebody who's leading product management for a, you know, cosmetic company, right? It's telling you more about what this person's background is in product management. Finance, FP&A leader, right? That's going to tell me something right out of the gate. Data-driven decision making. Now, could we take that a little bit further for a specific individual and say, what is it about, data-driven? Is it about connecting, business optimization? What else can we maybe dig in a little bit deeper? But then over here, they talk about scaling high growth companies, right? So that's the type of organization that they know how to lead FP&A with. HR, talent acquisition and DEI. Okay, these are two areas where we know this HR person has a skill and a background in, right? And then building teams. So that's going to tell you, okay, for this person, this is the type of role that they are going to be targeting. Now, depending on what the organization is that you're applying to, maybe it isn't an AI based company or an AI based opportunity. You're definitely going to want to update this line. This should be the line that you look at first when you go to update your resume to say, okay, how does my background align with this job? So it should be your role and expertise as it aligns with the job that you're targeting. Think of this as a bridge between what you've done and what you want to do, right? It should be true to both worlds. The core strength as it aligns in both of these worlds. And then the industry as it aligns with both your current experience and the experience that you're targeting. So it should always be a bridge between those two. Now, when we look at your LinkedIn headline, this is where the searchability piece comes into play. And what I've done here is I did a search just on, the term was environmental impact. So I was looking for people that had a background in environmental impact. And this was a true search result that I pulled up. And as you can see, I've blurred out all the names, but this was the search result that came up to me. And what you'll see here is you'll see a host of different strategies for putting together a LinkedIn headline. Now, if you look at this first person up here, aspiring to create an environmental impact, I want to applaud the effort that it didn't just note either student or like what they were doing in what company, but it doesn't tell me anything about their industry, about their level of expertise, right? It doesn't give me a whole heck of a lot to point in the direct. They could be in finance, they could be in communications, they can be in marketing, they can be in science. Who knows? So we got to dig a little bit deeper. As we move down, environmental scientist at Environmental Protection Agency. All right, this gives me a little bit more to work with here. But at the end of the day, what you will also notice is this current line right here. It says environmental scientist at the EPA. And then it goes into what their current role really is. So this right here is a wasted space in their headline. What I want to know more is what type of environmental work are they doing at the EPA? They could be focused on maybe wetlands versus forest versus, what is their area of focus? Does somebody who's looking for a specific type of environmental scientist at the EPA, what are they going to come to that person's profile for? So then we start digging in a little deeper. Environmental consultant, polluted sites, environmental impact assessment. As a consultant, that tells me a bit more about why we're coming and looking at this profile, right? What they could maybe do to build this out a little bit is talk through the value is that they bring to the table, right? Is it that they are supporting businesses that are trying to get contracts? Or is it that they are working with maybe construction management companies or technology companies that are trying to put up cell towers, all different reasons to have an environmental impact assessment. What is the impact that they bring? What types of clients do they serve, right? Transforming green investing to drive environmental impact. All right, so this person is all about green investing and driving impact. So I do like that we're getting a tagline there. Green investing is something that somebody looking for funding in that way would likely be searching for. And then lastly, okay, social impact, CSR, employee engagement, corporate philanthropy, data analysis, research, and it goes on. It keeps going, right? So this one, I actually would say, all right, we've packed a lot into this one. How can we tell that story in a more concise way? Just because we have 220 characters does not mean we need to use all 220 characters. I want to make sure that we are telling a story with this. And so looking at this, somebody who is in social impact, they're focusing on employee engagement, corporate philanthropy, data analysis. I'm still trying to wrap my head around, okay, what does this person actually do, right? And so when you look, you can kind of get a short intro right here. And it says, okay, expertise in social impact, CSR, workplace giving. My guess is that, it's going to tie more into that corporate philanthropy. And if I were to make a recommendation for this person, it would be to lean into this corporate philanthropy side of things. Employee engagement, data analysis, research, that might be a piece of their background that we can dig into further and in the about section and do more of that storytelling about how they're maybe driving philanthropy through the lens of being able to build up and, engage their teams more. So I hope that in talking through these different examples, we can see some of what's working well, and then some things that we can dig in deeper and dive into. My hope, though, is that when you are writing your LinkedIn headline, you're really looking at a balance of what are the words that somebody is going to use to search out somebody with my skill set, and what can I say to make them click on my profile? It's the pick me, choose me, love me line of your LinkedIn profile. All right. So if your headline or in your resume and your LinkedIn profile are an elevator pitch, a concise way to say, hey, pick me, look at me over here, your about section and your summary is going to be what gets them to kind of stick around a little bit longer, right? It's the longer form version of who you are. It's expanding out on those initial ideas. So let's talk about how to write a powerful summary and about section. So when you're writing your summary, this is the line that sits up at the top of your profile your resume, that is really there to kind of pull together who you are as a professional. It's there to kind of bring all of the themes together before they dive into your background. Your background, your experience section should be what validates that initial statement. Now, I want to be very clear. We are talking about a summary statement, and I want you to absolutely do away with the old style objective statement. If you have the phrase seeking opportunity in that top introduction section of your resume, I want you to immediately delete it right now, because what an objective statement used to be on a resume was a way for somebody to say, hey, this is the type of role you should consider me for. When we're looking at a resume now, most of the time it is aligned with a very specific job description that you have probably clicked through some online applicant tracking system to connect with. It should be a given that whatever your objective is aligns with what the role is that you're there to apply. And goodness knows I have read a fair share of resumes that don't have that alignment, and that would automatically kind of disqualify you from the position. So instead, when we're talking about a standout resume summary, I want you to make a case for yourself. You're going to clarify who you are and your expertise. So that could look like something along the lines of a strategic marketing leader with a track record of elevating brands and driving audience engagement. I want you to focus on the achievements that prove your impact. So you're known for leading multi-channel campaigns that strengthen market position and brand loyalty. Talk about the skills that make you stand out. Brand storytelling, digital marketing, data-driven decision-making. These are the things that these are the things that make you tick, right? And what you can come back to over and over again. And then lastly, the expertise aligned with your target role, right? That you bring a deep understanding of consumer behavior and market trends to create high impact strategies. And then you basically take all of these, your clarification, your achievements, your skills, and your expertise, and you put it together. And I will let you read this down here at the bottom. It literally brings together all these 4 ideas into one statement. All right. Now, when we think about the reverse of this with LinkedIn, I don't want you to drag and drop your resume summary. Your resume summary is targeted to, like I've said, a specific opportunity. And at the end of the day, whoever is reading your LinkedIn profile, if they're looking at you for a job, they're reading your resume too, right? They've got these 2 assets. How boring if they're reading the same thing twice, right? So let that LinkedIn be more about telling the story. It should be conversational and engaging, right? So think about an opening hook. And I've included some questions that you can ask yourself here to get the ball rolling and thinking about how can you tell that story about yourself in a different way than you're telling on your resume. I want you to think about, of course, an opening hook that talks about what you do and why does it matter. Maybe it's about what's your philosophy around the work you do. Think about what fires you up when you are, talking about your career. What is it that maybe represents you as a professional? You want something that is going to say more than, I do this job for this place, right? The first paragraph of your about section is the introduction that somebody, when they're looking at your profile, sees before they hit that see more button. You want to pull them in with something that is going to have them want to see more, right? From there, let's talk about that career journey. How'd you get to where you are? Give us a taste of that background and expertise. What are the accomplishments that best showcase who you are? And then bring us into the current times. What are your big strengths? What are you focused on right now, right? What are your goals? What passions motivate you outside of work? It's okay to talk about your personal life a little bit on LinkedIn, and to share a little bit about, like, hey, outside of work, you're gonna find me on a paddleboard in Tahoe, or outside of work, you will find me at the gym doing whatever it is that it is you do. Share a little bit of it. It's like a 95-5 ratio, 95% career with like a little 5% anecdote about yourself. That can be a nice way to kind of button everything up at the end and tell somebody a little bit more about yourself. So let's take a look. Here's an example that I really like that somebody created. This is somebody who has been in the AV industry for a long time. And let me tell you, when I talk to this individual, I've never heard somebody talk so passionately about sound systems as this person did. And so when they wrote this profile around their kind of vision, how they see the AV industry, it totally had me. I've got to keep reading. I want to know more about why is this person so passionate about AV systems? And if I were hiring somebody to build a sound system in a commercial property, I would want somebody to be this knowledgeable and this excited about it, right? So they start off by just capturing you right away around the fact that they really look at the AV industry as a fusion of science, artistry, and tradition. And then right away bringing it into throughout their career, what has brought them to the point where they love sound systems this much. Looking into their background a little bit, and then some of the biggest projects that they have worked on. So it doesn't have to be crazy long. You do have 2,600 characters, but I beg of you, please do not use all 2,600 of those characters without breaking it up with some set headlines. Nobody will read that much text, but it's okay to tell a story in a very personal way. What I want you to get away from in your LinkedIn about section is using a bio, using your resume summary, using third person. This is a conversation. LinkedIn, and I will share it in the chat when we get into the Q&A portion. LinkedIn puts out a blog. They have a blog that they update every year or so of 14 summaries that they love. And in each of those summaries, they the individual writes a different strategy than anybody else, but with every single one of these examples, you feel like you're having a conversation. You feel like you get to know that person and their tone, their humor, their, the way they connect and engage a little bit better. So I want you to think through what it is in your story that is going to be what people want to hear about and what people want to do. Now, can you stick to just maybe starting with this second paragraph, adding a little bit, of course, more about being an AV professional, and skip some of the more philosophical ideas or vision, or, something that is a little bit more horizon looking? Of course, you can be way more straightforward than this, but I want you to have a little fun with it and be yourself in that process. Okay, so I do want to touch both on the professional experience, both on your resume and your LinkedIn. I'm not going to touch on it a ton today because I do feel like the storytelling piece is really the top fold of your resume, that introduction in your LinkedIn profile. That is where a lot of the storytelling happens, but I don't want you to skimp or to miss out on an opportunity to really define your story and what the kind of missions you accomplished in each of your roles were. When it comes to your resume, I want you to focus on three things. I want you to clearly define what your role was. I want you to think through, what the scope of work was for your resume for each of those positions. I want you to really think through, what is it that you managed? How big was your team? The projects that you oversaw. Again, don't focus on the company as much, right? I don't want you to think through as much about, hey, this was this type of company doing this. People can go research that on their own. They're there to read about you and your experience, and you can give them insight into how big or how focused that role was through this description, right? And then each of those bullets, I want you to really focus on impact. Again, remember, accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. And sometimes that can be presented as XYZ. Sometimes it can be YZX. Another common acronym to look at when you're building out your bullets is PAR, which is problem, action, result. I want you to really focus, though, on that result, right? That impact, that measurement. What was the accomplishment? And as you can see here, in each of these bullets, you're going to see what they did. They created an analytics hub and spoke consulting model, and then how they did it, and then what it was that it accomplished, right? Implemented Scrum practices. And if you look at the end of that bullet, it's, it accelerated value delivery and hypothesis testing by more than 50%. So you're really showing, this is how successful I was in that role. When it comes to your LinkedIn, this is not a drag and drop on your resume. This should not just be pulling what your experience was, for a couple of reasons. For starters, this is a public space. Anybody can read it. And a lot of times we include things on our resume that we don't want out on the internet, right? It's okay to include certain things, but it isn't necessarily appropriate to be sharing that impact, that shift, maybe what a company wasn't doing well before and is now doing better because of what you implemented on LinkedIn, right? I would say in certain cases it can be, but it's how you position it. So I want you to take a more storytelling approach. And this is probably one of the most fun examples I've ever read of somebody's LinkedIn experience section. And she is probably one of the most enthusiastic writers that I've ever gotten the chance to work with. And I love the way she talks in here and brings you in, just like with an about section, by starting by saying, who says you can't leap over tall buildings? And then talking about what the business transformation team did in Warp Speed. And in here, she's also talking about how it was one of the most rewarding experiences of her professional career. And she worked with the best people, like hyping up her team that she worked with. And like the coolest part of the job was being able to work with the executive team and the co-CEOs to inspire, educate, and engage employees. So really showcasing that impact, but moreover, the enthusiasm she brought into that role. Um, Again, have some fun with it. Talk about, yes, what you were doing, but what was going on in like the epicenter of what of that situation versus just the accomplished X is measured by Y by doing Z of it all. This is your chance to use your voice. All right. So just to recap, and then we're going to close it out and get ready for questions. When it comes to your resume, lead with impact, XYZ format, keep it brief, structured, and results driven. And then focus on your hard skills, measurable achievements, and really think through the keywords that are going to be important for an applicant tracking system, right? On LinkedIn, this is where you get to tell your human story and your career journey. Remember that you have multiple segments of your audience that all are reading the same story, and you want to make sure that whoever is reading your profile is going to take something away from it. I want you to show why you do what you do, not just what you've done. Expanding that thread, pulling the thread a little bit more from what you were saying on your resume. You've got 2 pages with your resume. You've got a lot more characters with your LinkedIn. It's okay to use them. First person language, get comfortable talking about yourself. And then this is also a chance for you to kind of talk about some of the other things, your motivations, what sparks, what lights you up, what you are moving toward. It's also a way for you to kind of fill in some of the gaps on your LinkedIn, right? To be able to say, okay, like, yeah, there's a career gap here, or I'm working toward this certification. LinkedIn is a great opportunity for you to give kind of a real-time update of what's going on. All right, that's it for today's presentation of your storytelling for resumes and LinkedIn.